Good.
Thank you for joining us. Can you do me a favor and mute your microphone, please?
Okay.
Until it's time for you to speak. Everybody here. Let's see.
Did I mute it?
No, I don't think so.
Girl, you know I'm old. I don't know how to do all this stuff.
Tara, this is the Asada. I'm under Hyde Park, but I'm trying to look at where do I turn the video on at?
You should see. You should
On
see
the share screen?
video camera at the bottom of your screen.
Okay, wait just a minute. Oh, I know what's happening. Okay, I got it.
Wonderful, wonderful. All right, is everybody here? I think so. Okay, that's you, Miss Ann, LGK.
Okay, I'm here.
All right. Hi, Queen. How you doing?
Hi, how are you today?
Well, thanks. All right, everybody. I think is Brother Jabari here? Let me see. Ashley Sinclair. Hey, Skip. Okay. All right. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Brother Jabari is not in yet, but so I'm Tara Perry, and I am launching BlackPact. And what BlackPact is, we are going to be a political action committee eventually, but for now, we're more of just a political organizing for the Black community specifically. We're also targeting right now Los Angeles and South Central, but since we wanted to really talk about basically COVID-19 in Black LA and resurrecting the spirit of Malcolm X. And because we know that there's a lot going on right now with the protests and the unfortunate killing of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and Ahmaud Arbery, things have really changed basically the direction of this conversation. I would like to start with everybody, if you guys could all do a 30-second introduction of who you are, that would be great. And I also wanted to bring this discussion to the community. The current legislators have been having a lot of conversations, but they have not engaged the public. And so I wanted to put you all fabulous people together who are so knowledgeable in your expertise in your specific areas, and really be able to share information with the public and allow them to ask questions and really see what it is that they need and what information they may be stuck on, because a lot of you have a lot of experience and a lot of you have been in this community for a long time. So I wanted to bring you all in for that discussion. All right, thank you for joining. Can we start with Dr. Ross, and then we'll go with Queen Asada, and then we'll go with Angela, Brandy Bonner, Joe Collins, Justin Palmer, Skip Townsend, and we're still waiting on Brother Jabari. If you guys can do your introductions in that direction, and just introducing you all as the actual panel to the public, because there are other people who are here who are not necessarily on the panel. All right, thank you.
Thanks. Hey, I'm Dr. Rachel Ross. I am a family medicine practitioner. You guys may have seen me on The Doctors. I was on there for 4 seasons. Most of my clinical practice has been in Gary, Indiana, in the Chicagoland area. I recently relocated to Los Angeles and connected with Tara. And, it's interesting, Tara and I's politics kind of go back and forth. So she's a great sparring partner, but I think she invited me here because she knows I have some really strong feelings about racism and how it affects us clinically and how it affects our lives and how it's playing out in the media and how it's even playing out in COVID-19. So thanks for having me here, and it's nice to meet you all.
Thank you, Dr. Rachel. Queen Asada.
Hi, my name is Asada Umoja, and I am a lifelong activist. My issues and concerns have always been about what do we need to do to improve the quality of life for our people, and how do we become a force where we control the destiny of our future. Right now, I'm the president of the Hyde Park Organizational Partnership for Empowerment, critically concerned about the type of development that comes into our community and how that development impacts our lives and our ability to be able to sustain our communities.
Thank you so much. Angela Nirvana.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Ms. Tara Perry, for having me. I'm Angela Nirvana. I am a co-founder of the ADOS SoCal movement, co-founder of the Friends of ADOS Super PAC, creator of Friends of ADOS TV on Facebook and YouTube, and I partner with Concerned Black American Citizens. We're pushing right now for a COVID stimulus demand to the tune of $6,000 per month for ADOS for 24 months, along with 60% of housing subsidy and health care, a silver plan through the federal government. But I'm also in the fight for reparations and a Black agenda in exchange for our vote this election cycle. And yeah, lover of ADOS people and specifically on our needs exclusively. Thank you.
And what's ADOS, Angela?
American Descendants of Chattel Slavery.
Thank you so much. Okay, who's next? I think next is Brandy Bonner. And sorry, I'm not trying to be sexist. It's just really the order of where everyone is. So yeah, the guys are last. Sorry about that, guys.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, Tara. Thank you for having me. My name is Brandy Bonner. I'm actually a transitional kindergarten teacher at Park Prep Elementary. And I wouldn't say that I am very much so into politics, but I guess I am maybe here to, give my experiences and my take with regards to racism and African-American children in education.
Brandy. Mr. Collins.
Good afternoon. My name is Joe Collins. Tara, everyone, I appreciate you for having me here. I am a 13-year U.S. Navy veteran and a Republican congressional candidate for California's 43rd District. And my whole goal for the district being a South LA native is to bring quality and quality jobs and increase the life of the people who live in the district. Currently, I am in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and we've been out here for the last few days supporting the families of those who were killed at the hands of negligent police brutality.
Right on.
Oh, you're still there? Cool.
Yeah, we still here. We had to extend another day because I came out here with a crew, and the people wanted us to have a rally out here to show our support from the West Coast. And so my team put together a rally that's actually going on right now. So I'm here. Once we get off this call, I got to shoot back out to the city to continue to show my support. One thing I will say is the people who are destroying the cities are not the people of the community. You have a lot of outside people actually coming into the cities and destroying everything. I've seen it with my own eyes. So it's a mess. It's terrible, but it's not the people of the cities that's destroying this stuff. Even in LA, New York, Dallas, it's not the people who are living in the cities. It's outside people coming into the cities, and it's a terrible thing what's going on right now.
Wow. So thank you for the fight. Thank you for being out there. Who's next? Skip Townsend. Melinda, could you please mute your phone?
Good afternoon, everyone. Skip Townsend. I am known for being an activist in LA, gang intervention, working with the city of LA before the grid was founded, product of a guy named Darren Bo Taylor, but I'm the executive director of Second Call, and I am part of boots on the ground in LA almost every day. There's something going on that helping to keep the south part of LA safe. So glad to be on the call. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you, Skip, for joining us. Let's see who's next. Justin Palmer. Justin, can you introduce yourself? Where'd you go?
I'm having some technical issues. I'm sorry. Justin Palmer. I'm a civil rights lawyer here in Long Beach, California. I'm happy to be on the panel. I deal with police brutality lawsuits involving shootings, I deal with prisoner misconduct cases also. Happy to be here and be part of the conversation.
Great. Thank you for joining us. Yeah, so everyone who's involved, I really wanted to provide Justin and his legal expertise on the panel because I know people have a lot of questions regarding what's happening with the current situation with the riot, or not the riots, the protests, the uprisings, and also Dr. Rachel, so she can answer any questions people may have in regards to COVID. But I know Dr. Rachel's pressed for time, so we'll start with her first. Dr. Rachel, is that fine? I call you that, or Dr. Ross, which you prefer? You're muted.
Dr. Rachel works. I like that.
Great. Thanks, Dr. Rachel. Okay, so in regards to COVID, how are the numbers really real? Is it very much affecting the African-American, Black community, ADOS community in disproportionate numbers, disproportionate to their actual population representation? And how many cases have you diagnosed?
That's a great question. So here in the Los Angeles area, you know, being on the forefront is really, I've been 2 days at an urgent care that's in the area. And, you know, we've diagnosed one case since this whole thing has been going on. But what I've noticed and what seems to be our issue is just that, you know, when we get to the emergency room and somebody sees a Black person, I think this is regardless of whether we're pregnant, whether we have COVID, whether we have hypertension, whether we have a heart attack, or whether we have a stroke, they just don't care enough to really try to figure out how to save you. So if you notice, that tends to be why our survival rates aren't like they should be, because of the health care that we get when we get somewhere. Mm-hmm. You'll hear anecdotal stories over and over again about loved ones who just decided, you know what, I'm gonna sit this out, I'm gonna try it at home, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do this. And those are the ones we hear about that are surviving. But honestly, if we polled everybody here, I bet you everybody would say, well, the people that we know that actually ended up in the hospital, they tend to do worse. Well, why is that? You know, well, it really kind of depends on the doctor you see. And so what happens with COVID is you get to the hospital, and by law, your family practitioner is cut off. The person who knows everything about you is cut off from your care. You're isolated from your family, and you're stuck in a room. Now, you and I all know what happens when they see a Black person laying on the table gasping for air. 9 out of 10, you know, they might just not care. So I think what we're going to have to do, whether it's COVID, hypertension, stroke, so on and so forth, we have to get to the bottom and expose and continue to expose just the systematic racism that's built into the system that's designed to take care of us. Mm-hmm. So in terms of these numbers we keep seeing, I mean, you know, yes, there are plenty of us who are suffering because we have COVID-19. And yes, there are plenty of us who aren't doing very well. But the problem is that if you take somebody who already has a health condition, whether it's because they live in a toxic environment, because fracking is going on and the water's contaminated, whether it's because they, you know, are on some medication they shouldn't be on, whether it's because they're obese, you name it, any type of virus is going to be more detrimental to that person. And unfortunately, we live in communities and situations where that's happening. So that's what puts us on a higher scale. Now, what's happening in California, everything's shut down. They've shut our businesses off. They've made it impossible for you to make a living. They've shut down hairdressers. They've shut down all of this. And all we hear is fear, 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 numbers, numbers, numbers. We have a big ship sitting off the coast waiting for all these COVID patients. Absolutely not. That's all not true. Doctors around the state, around the country are sitting around twiddling our thumbs, except for the epicenters where it was really, really strong. Is Los Angeles one of those areas? Absolutely not. Go to Cedars, it's empty. You know, people are twiddling. So we're finally getting back moving. But, in terms of the political things, for people like yourself, Tara, and Joe, who are in the political space, I just want to know how we can continue to function in an environment where all of our rights are stripped away to actually make money, and we need money to survive. And then at the same time, we've got illness and disparity on us. So no, those numbers that you're seeing are really designed to keep scaring us. But at the same time, the virus is real. We do have to protect ourselves, and we do have to come up with strategies to survive this.
Thank you for that. Does anyone have anything else to say in regards to that while we have Dr. Rachel?
I actually wanted to comment with regards to what you said about going to the hospital. And it's funny that you bring it up because I actually was recently shot and went to the hospital. I had fear that I was going to get neglected. And so I made it a point to continue to let people know, like, I'm a teacher, I have insurance. Like I found myself constantly saying these things because I wanted to get treated. I didn't want to get just left somewhere or neglected, you know, and that was my main fear. My main fear, even my bullet wound or my broken leg, I was in fear of not getting treated. So I'm happy that you bring that up because that's the first thing that came to my mind.
That is so, I'm so glad you said that. It's almost like, okay, so if we go to court, right, we got to get our hair done. We got to put on you know, we have to try to look as respectable. We have to remind them that we have a job, you know, all those things. But when you go to the hospital, you have to do the same thing and it may not even work. It may not even work. I'll be like, I'm a doctor. My families are doctors. I'm doing all of the things. But even as a physician, I've got to deal with the same racist bullshit when you walk into the hospital. So until we can figure out ways to kind of keep people, I tell everyone all the time, you have to be very careful what hospital you go to for an emergency. Are they going to respect you? Are they going to see you for who you are? Are they going to try to even save your life? So that ultimately becomes the problem. So I'm so glad you chimed in with that, Brandy.
I'd also like to weigh in on this. A lot of the challenge with this health system is our inability as a people to be able to afford the proper care. You know, my salary has been suppressed, as have many here in Southern California. I came from the industry of banking, working workers' comp law, and they wanted to charge me $758 per month for a PPO. When I went the route of an HMO to try and save a couple $100s, the doctors were inferior. You know, I wouldn't take, you know, a rabid dog to these places. I wouldn't take, and so you get this inferior care that you have to pay a gazillion dollars for. And so it starts really with this Obamacare that's not affordable for most. And this would be lower middle class, which I now qualify, now that I'm no longer earning 6 figures a year. We're the ones that are responsible for the health care for those who can't afford it. So our premiums go through the roof to offset that. Another thing that's happening with this COVID piece, I just don't believe that we're dying from COVID in the numbers that they state, because I've had guests on my show from New York, the epicenter, and from New England. And one of them said that she could not even get an autopsy for her Uncle Sonny, that when he left the nursing home to go be treated for his kidney issues in the hospital, he tested negative for COVID. All of a sudden, they're treating him with hydrochloroquine without consulting with his patient advocate, which was her mother. And so next thing you know, they're giving him pain medication. How is he able to talk about any pain when the hydrochloroquine has knocked him out? Because that's not a solution. So ultimately, he died. They charged her $9,000 for a funeral with a handful of people in a closed casket. She doesn't know if her loved one's in that casket. She doesn't know if organs have been removed. And she doesn't even know if COVID was a real cause of death. So it's, you know, we're dying in these disproportionate numbers, but what from? Is it the respirators that they're putting us on, where 80% are dying once they put the respirator? Could this be resolved if they had treated them when they first talked about, when they first came in with issues of COVID? Could this have been treated like pneumonia? I don't know, but they're telling them to go home until they can't breathe. By the time you go home and you're not even tested for COVID till the 5th visit, the lungs are filled. So yeah, they're preparing a body bag for you. So these white trucks in the New York City are lined all the way miles, these refrigerated trucks. And when you go in, it's like a morgue all over. They placing beds everywhere they can place a bed while demanding people social distance in a New York City where folks are living 10 to 1,000 square feet because they can't afford the rents. It's a nightmare.
Not to
And
mention
it all goes back to, I'm sorry,
Yes.
it goes back to the disparaging gap. I mean, the egregious racial wealth gap. This is all boils down to the fact that we can't even afford to be American. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. I'm so glad you said that. Not to mention the fact that in New York City, they made it illegal for emergency medical services to even do CPR on someone, whether they had COVID or not. So it was just like this death trap after death trap, almost as if it was designed to make those numbers as high as possible, to get us all as afraid as possible to even just live and to survive. And so this whole thing, I've just been watching it from here, talking to colleagues that are in the trenches, talking to people all over the country, and it's just not what's being presented to us. Something's off. So thank you, Angela. Thank you. Thank you.
Joe, you have something to say? You've unmuted.
Yeah, I think I would have to agree with the doctor on this one as well. I don't believe that the transparency when it comes to COVID-19 is being portrayed in a manner where we can gain the information that we need. I mean, when we talk about a disease or so-called virus that kills people at the same rate or even lower than, car accidents, gun violence, or everything else that happens in the inner cities. And like the doctor said, they shut our state down where we have underserved communities where people can't even take care of themselves, let alone be able to afford healthcare insurance. It becomes a problem. And I've been saying this for the longest time. We've been organizing rallies up and down California to reopen the government because, even if, not saying that, it's real or fake, but even if you do believe that COVID-19 is real, I mean, you still can't afford to, take care of your family. And what is $1,200 going to do for someone who lives in South Central Los Angeles that, work a subprime income earning job? Or what about our seniors? Or what about our homeless people who can't even take care of themselves because of mental illness or lack of income or what have you? And the government has proven, especially in California, that they're not going to provide resources to our inner cities. So what left do we have? What are we supposed to do? Are we still supposed to continue to trust that Gavin Newsom, who's, made a point to let us know that illegal immigrants is his priority, continue to make laws or rules for us? Or are we going to, do something to remove him and get someone who has our best interests at heart, especially in an underserved inner city communities?
But some people would say that, hey, we have the PPP program, we have the EIDL emergency disaster loans, right? Like, aren't those supposed to help these families sustain until they reopen the economy here in California?
The key word was supposed. I said the key word was supposed. It was supposed to help.
So you're saying those are not working?
I'm not saying that it's not working. What I'm saying is that if you say that they're supposed to help, that's assuming that everybody was able to obtain the PPPs or the business loans or whatever. But when you look in the Black community, it's not happening. And even the thing that makes me upset about this is we pay so much taxes in California, and I preach this all the time. With the amount of money that's been stolen from us in taxes, you would think that we should be able to get that money back in order to help us when the government who takes our money shuts our economy down. So yeah, the programs were created with the idea of helping people, but everybody cannot, have access to these programs. And if you apply, the money's already gone, or you probably doesn't fit the criteria to attain, $9 million like some of these colleges with $40 billion endowments, especially if you have a mom and pop shop. And one thing that also makes me upset is when, we have a lot of small businesses in South LA. And a lot of people utilize these small businesses as if it was a 9-to-5 job for a regular person. And so you're telling these people who are using these businesses to not only take care of these families, but, when they hire people from in our cities and the business shut down, the people who live in our cities can't even take care of their families. Right. So now we have small businesses who can't take care of their families. Mind you, regardless if it's a barbershop, regardless if it's a nail salon, they're using that nail salon to take care of their families. And just like, if you, God forbid, they shut down Amazon and Amazon, can't deliver products, or they fire everybody from Amazon because they cannot afford it. Now we have people who live in our communities that work at Amazon that can't feed themselves now, so everything is a chain reaction. My thing is, and I agree with the doctor on this one. You don't shut down the economy for a virus where there is no transparency and the numbers are skewed to make us fear.
When 94% of people in our country and worldwide, it's actually a bigger number, 94% of people actually recover from the virus. And that other 6%, that's a high number, but what's really happening to those people when they even get to the hospital? Are they really dying of COVID? When you look at the CDC numbers, you can't figure out what's true there. So, you know, you're right. There's no transparency about what this virus really is. And they're sending out this money, you know, keeping us all, you know, comfortable and calm. But what happens when the money runs out and it stops? What happens to those businesses that couldn't even pay their rent, that couldn't even survive during that time? And so what we haven't done is we haven't even thought about the entrepreneurs. So, okay, so you had a job and, you know, we're going to give you some unemployment and all that. But what about people who are just supporting themselves off of their natural hustle ability and have real businesses? Those businesses aren't going to be here by the time the governor decides that he and his rich friends can open up the state anymore. And of course the numbers are going up, because they're testing more, right? They've got more test kits. They've set up centers to test. So of course the numbers are going up because now we're testing more. But are we seeing more sick people? Are we seeing more deaths? Are we seeing more hospitalizations? And are we? We don't know, because they won't give us real information. But from what I'm talking to, my colleagues and my friends, no, we're really not. This hasn't been this pandemic that they've presented it to be. And that's the problem here, that you would use something like that to choke out communities and to bankrupt us all. For what? So that we can all be standing in the soup line together singing Kumbaya? I'm not with it.
Because it's about pillaging the storehouse a second time. Everything they didn't get during the first recession in 2008, they've come to clear the monopoly board this time around. And if we're not careful, we're going to lose what little wealth we have left. We lost 53% of our wealth under Obama when he chose to bail out Wall Street. Now, my question and my issues are, why do we believe in capitalism until the Wall Street players and these corporations do misgivings in the market, and now they want a socialist agenda? They want capitalism, and then they want us to correct the market with socialism. They have poured trillions into the stock market, which is why you see a depression happening in the community, and the stocks are doing well. They keep pouring money into it daily while they throw us dirt. Furthermore, where was the uproar last year when month over month, heart attacks and cancer beat out COVID deaths month over month? I didn't see anybody calling for no pandemic and shutting the damn country down. I saw none of that. And so this is a front so that they can continue to pillage the storehouse and render us all a third world country. This is really what this is about, and it's on both sides of the aisle. How dare the Democrats not be fighting against, why is Nancy Pelosi filling up an 1,800-page stimulus with peanuts for the people who can't even, oh, by the way, get through to get the PPP? You can't reach nobody on the phone, ain't nobody answering. It took 2 months for them here in Southern California to deal with people like me who were laid off from COVID since March the 16th. And then I've got a mortgage company telling me that they want a balloon payment in 3 months. With what money? I can't even reach unemployment. And if that's an issue for me as a professional, imagine all the other gig workers. I literally had to get out here with my child and risk COVID to do Instacart because of the pressure I was getting from my mortgage company, which was a private lender. If you don't have Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac, this other stuff does not apply. So job discrimination and environmental racism are real. And all of this goes back to slavery, Jim Crow, and accrued ongoing systemic racism, oppression, and disadvantage in the country our ancestors built with their lives. All of it is related.
The crazy part about it is, since we've been out here protesting in Minneapolis, you know, everybody's been blaming the police, but I had to tell these people, I said, okay, so the police are law enforcers. I said, so let's take a look at who's been writing these laws and the reason why they're still in place. You know, so if you want to project your anger, yeah, it's fine to be upset at the police, but they're doing what they were contracted to do, which is enforce the law. But we have to start getting on these lawmakers and start repealing the bills and the laws that were put in place to hurt the Black community.
Excuse me. I think I'd like to say that it's about more than just lawmakers making laws. There is a history of systemic racism in this country, you know, and it goes past a lot of times legislation. You're dealing with the consciousness of people. And, you know, this is kind of like related to like some of the things that we're talking about, how we're going to relate Malcolm to this. is that our whole existence in this country from day one has been not an American dream, but an American nightmare. And so it's not just, you know, that if the legislators would make some different legislation that people would do differently, because there is legislation that is continually violated. Okay, so we really do have to look at the level of just moral corruption that exists in this country, starting at the White House. Okay, so what is it inside of the people that make them think that they have a right to really just totally destroy another people? So we really have to look at what we are going to do in order to make sure that we survive, and that is beyond just legislation. How do we pull our communities together? You know, because it starts at the local level. What do we do to make sure we have the things in place that we need in order to survive? Because if we're not looking at that, and if we're looking outside of ourselves, then we're not really looking at where we really need to be. Okay.
And understand this about legislation. The Supreme Court in 2018 ruled that it was okay for police to murder and then think. That's what we're dealing with right now.
Yeah, but it even goes beyond 2018. We're looking at like hundreds of years. You understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
So I mean, I understand what you're saying in terms of, you know, how the legislation itself can support, you know, that whole history of racism. But I think that what Joe was talking about was that if we had better legislation for the police to go by, that would make a difference in their behavior. I think it's really important that we look at not just legislation, but again, that we look at the whole systemic racism that exists in this country and continues to exist, that continues this American nightmare.
Absolutely, and I don't disagree, but I'm just bringing up to your awareness that the highest court in the land has ruled in favor of the police to murder us and then think and ask questions later.
Yes.
And this is why it can take up to 4 days for them to arrest Chauvin in the recent Floyd execution. It could take 4 days because the laws are in place to protect them. This is why they can murder us with impunity. Those laws protect them. That's the problem. And we're not a protected class, and we need to be. We need to be a protected class.
Here, I'm gonna agree with the young lady that was just speaking before you. I absolutely agree. I think we were saying the same thing. It's not the legislation right now that we have that's the problem, but it's the legislation that was passed hundreds of years ago that is still in effect today. The most recent one that allows cops to kill Black people is the '94 crime bill, which Joe Biden wrote and passed, that specifically targets people of color in inner city communities. So I'm going to agree with her. We have to remove, creating legislation is not the problem. But if we started removing legislation that is used to target and attack Black people, now we're waiting for the police department that allows them to execute us as they do.
Hold on a second. Sorry. Go ahead, Joe. Sorry, I had to move that person.
Joe, I'm so glad you said that, because I think historically we've got these leaders who maybe will get on a show and play a saxophone, or we've got these leaders that, you know, really position themselves in places that seem like they're for us. But when you really start to look at the laws that they put in place and that they made there, you're like, well, wait a minute, I thought you were almost Black like we were. So I'm so glad you said that.
Let me ask a question. Skip, let me bring you into the conversation. So we're talking about, I guess we've naturally transitioned into police brutality and things like that. So you work closely with the police. What do you think their main issues are as to why they tend to shoot us on sight, and why, especially LA County police law enforcement, right? Like, they've killed over 601 people since 2012, unarmed people. So, and majority of them Black. So what is the real issue that's happening with law enforcement? Why are these deaths occurring?
The one thing that I think about, Tara, is over the years, how our relationship in South LA has been with law enforcement. Of course, with Daryl Gates, we had absolutely no relationship at all. When Bratton came, there was a a civil meeting where the community was able to sit and for the first time, we believed that they were listening to us. After him came Charlie Beck, which had great ties in South LA. And now we have Michael Moore, who is doing the best that he can. But here's the thing, we're talking about maybe 100 to 200 good officers, people who truly care about the community, but they have 10,000 sworn. So what that means is that there is no such thing as a good officer, because even though this guy might sit down and break bread with us, eat with us or whatever, there's a systematic dysfunction in the department that they're not addressing, and they never have addressed. And it's not important for them to address. And somehow, some way, we voted for a Black district attorney who went to Dorsey, and I have to hit myself in the head every day because I took her around when she was running. I'm thinking, okay, she's Black, she's from the community, she has to be about us. And she has failed to ever bring charges on any of the officers who have done any of the shootings. They have a budget of $70 million. $70 million, that budget is simply for insurance purposes, for those families that they have either maimed or killed or whatever the situation is. So I think it's systemic. We can't look at one individual. If we get rid of this chief, we'll get another one. He might be even better. And, not just talking about LA, but nationwide, it has to be systemic changes in the police department and how they not only respond to Black people, but how do they view Black people? That has to be at the root of it right there. And then another thing is that we have to take a position of power. I know I never would have wanted to be a police officer. And if any of my children, my older children would have said, oh, I want to be the police, I would have chastised them and told them the police kill us, the police are against us. But how can we ever ask for a change? And like I say, we're asking if we don't demand to take control of the situation, to take and put ourselves in position of power. So I think that we have to stop asking and we have to make demands. We demand that they stop killing us. That's the demand across the country.
We have to be able to, I think, also stand up in the face of fear. We have to have the courage, to be, and so I really, I'm hearing some people say some kind of negative things about some of the young people, people that are out there, involved in the protests, and speaking against, the types of things that happened, what happened with Floyd in Minnesota. And it's just a whole string of those things that have happened. COVID-19 is just on top of all of that. But we have to remember the kind of trauma that we don't live normal lives in this country. Our lives in this country have never been normal. We've always been threatened with some type of trauma. So the trauma that we're experiencing now is a part of the daily trauma that we experience. And so what we have to be able to do is to move past, we have to remember who we are. We have to remember what we came from. We have to remember that we have what it is that we need in order to create what we want. This is a part, again, getting back to Malcolm, what Malcolm was talking about. For us to be able to pull together in our communities and to, by any means necessary, do what it is that we need to do in order to create the institutions and whatever it is that we need in order to defend ourselves. I just want to just say this, and we have a right to defend ourselves, and so when you talk about people being in the street, standing up, doing whatever it is that they need to do, whatever it is that we need to do to defend ourselves is what we need to do, because this whole effort of these continual killings and these other assaults that are happening against us are, looks like, in an intent, you want to re-enslave us. You're going to push us, force us to be your slaves. We have to make a decision. No, we're not going to be your slaves, and we'll do whatever it is that we need to do in order to make sure that we are free people.
I think it's nice that you talk about how we need to remember ourselves and know where we come from, because something that I've been with as a teacher is the history. You know, I always have to go off of the curriculum to teach my students particular things, because at this point, you know, the education system is so bad that the main focus is math, reading, and writing. But there are other things that these children need to learn so that they have the confidence to go out and protest and do what they need to do. If they don't know who they are, or know where they come from, or know how people have died for them, or what people have done for them, then they don't understand. You know, I'm working in all majority Black school, and you know, we celebrate Black History Month, but we just don't have the proper curriculum to even teach the children. And you know, they put so much pressure on us with regards to just the reading and the testing. But there are other parts of the education that these Black kids need so that they like have the confidence to move forward with what they believe in, and understand what they're fighting for and why they're fighting and who fought for them. Many of them don't know. Many of them don't know. And like I've said, I've oftentimes had to just go off of the curriculum just because I wanted to teach them. I had to squeeze it in and you know, worry about somebody coming in my classroom observing, saying that I shouldn't be teaching that. You know, these are things that we go through as teachers because they're so worried about test scores and other things that aren't that important.
Thank you for sharing that, Brandy. Brother Jabari, I would like to bring Brother Jabari into the conversation. Can you introduce yourself briefly, Brother Jabari? And I have a question for you to follow up with what Brandy was saying.
Yes, greetings. Thank you for allowing me to come into discussion. My name is Brother Jabari. I am the Executive Director of the Center in Los Angeles.
Do you have video capability or no?
I may in a moment. Let me see if I can straighten that out.
Okay.
But go ahead with your question.
I wanted to ask in regards to what Queen Asada was saying earlier about we basically have the right to do for ourselves. What would you say to people who would think that the system doesn't work for us, that the system is against us, like it's inherently built or it's working the way it's designed to, and to keep us at a disadvantage? Would you agree with that or disagree?
I would agree that it is working in a manner it was arranged for. Nothing was arranged for our benefit here. There are a number of us who have navigated through this terrain and have taken certain benefits out of the system. That has seemingly aggravated those who are part of the system, and they want to take every drop they can back from us. So Asada made another point that it is our right to defend ourselves. It's not just our right, it's our duty to defend ourselves. And it point out the hypocrisy that exists within the global white supremacist system. It's fine. This country was built on brutality. When people say violence doesn't get you anything, I counter that with saying that's a damn lie. One day, a group of white men landed in the East Coast and killed every Indian they found till they got to the West Coast and took a country. So let's not act like violence doesn't create or give you anything. They show us time and time again that that's contradictory. I think when we look at, I sat down with a few officials after the '92 rebellion, and they said the same thing. And I had to look at certain programs that came about after stuff started burning, unfortunately. When folk were talking peacefully, there was no rhythm. They wouldn't get no action at all. But when things started smoldering, it jumped off. Just like this situation in Minneapolis. The DA got on the TV one day and said that he did not have enough evidence to arrest Chauvin. And that night when precinct number 3 in Minneapolis burned, he got on the TV the next day and said he is arrested. And individuals, reporters asked him, well, sir, what new happened between yesterday and today? You know, and he wasn't able to give a sound answer. So I think the country and all of the perks that many of us benefit from, it was not there for us. We just have learned to navigate through Afro engineering and other Black creativity to extract what we can for our own benefit, but we ultimately need to stay on point and know that we need to have an agenda that works for us.
Thank you. Mr. Palmer, since you work with the court system and you actually work directly with this government, do you see it being possible for Black folks to really actualize our true level of freedom in this country? Have you seen it work for us?
Someone told me years ago that the answer to most questions is often money. And I find that with our civil rights lawsuits in particular, start to get the attention of municipalities once you have them pay verdicts after verdicts, no matter what stripe. I see cases involving shootings. I've read too many autopsies involving Black men. I've had police beating cases. I've had prisoner cases. And the way that you really get these folks to understand is to file these lawsuits, to bring them to jury trials, and to get the publicity behind them to say, this killing won't be okay. One killing should never be okay, but the conduct of these officers is not all right. And what you see, what I find in my practice is there's a duality between the civil lawsuit that we bring and often the internal investigation that precedes the lawsuit. They're often on two different goals, right? Like the internal investigation is designed to uncover whether or not the officers' actions were within policy. And I've seen lieutenants, I've seen internal affairs manipulate an investigation to give officers the benefit of the doubt in many respects. And our lawsuits often function as an objective search for what really happened, identifying the inconsistencies in the officer's account so that a judge and a jury ultimately will make the decision as to whether or not an officer's behavior on any given occasion was reasonable.
The demand, going back to Malcolm again, and Malcolm said that power concedes nothing without a demand.
You're on mute.
We absolutely have to make the demand, for what it is that we want. It's like Jabari just mentioned, how the decision suddenly changed. But you have people who are out there, they really are just trying, what they really want to do is instill fear in us, so that we will not move forward, to use whatever weapons they have, again, to try to beat us back. And we have to demand, absolutely demand, that we get the type of treatment that we want, particularly as it relates to all these cases where we're being abused with the COVID-19, with everything, all of it, in terms of really beginning to address, again, this American nightmare.
Thank you. I was asking Attorney Palmer, what do you see as some of the challenges in prosecuting some of these cases?
The number one challenge has been really finding some stream to corroborate the account of our clients, and video evidence and eyewitness testimony has been the number one challenge in a lot of our cases, because unless you can prove with a video or someone who's not connected to a particular event, something happened, judges, juries will scrutinize often our clients. And we're dealing with folks who, a lot of my cases involve folks who are involved in some type of criminal activity. And so I'm finding that juries oftentimes have to resist the urge to discount what my client is saying because he may or may not be involved in some type of criminal activity. And oftentimes what solves the gap, what resolves that conflict is video and eyewitness testimony.
Hey, Justin, I have a question. So do you see, because, the police pull everybody over, they mistreat all of us just because we're Black every now and then. Do you see, and I think sometimes, being upwardly mobile will say, oh, okay, well, that's happening to the drug dealers and they shouldn't have done anything wrong and so on and so forth. but it's not really happening to me. Are you finding that the cases that are happening to Black people who aren't involved in criminal activity are having the same types of hardships and problems with proving it? Or do you find that if you can say, oh, well, this person has a job and they do great things and they go to church every week, that there is a different type of process or justice going on there?
I think it's about the same in both cases. I got a case last week where a young man was on his way to work and an officer pulled behind him, asked him for his driver's license. This is like a 20-year-old kid, veteran, Army veteran, pulled out of his car and choked. And had it not been for some random person that pulled across the street and filmed it, we would be, one of the questions would be, well, can you prove that this officer on any given occasion was committed some form of misconduct? I get pulled over often, maybe once a month or so. And it's the same drill and routine. Officer, why are you pulling me over? Roll my windows down. Can I reach for my glove compartment to give you the information? It's an unnecessary exercise, but it's one that I'm living to tell. And when I talk to folks about arming them and equipping them with tools, all of the battles can't be fought, from my perspective, the battles are fought on a variety of fronts. It's done at the legislative level, it's done in the judicial system with lawyers like myself and my friends who do this type of work. But file a complaint against the officer so it goes into his personnel file. Make sure that you're using your voice and your platforms to expose these officers so that when the time comes to demonstrate that these officers are doing what it is that we say, we can look into their IA files to say, well, look, he's had X amount of complaints in the year of 2019. Oh, he's committed this against other folks. And you have to also resist that urge to say, well, if it doesn't really benefit me, then why am I going to go out of my way to really help? You'd be surprised. I filed motions to get personnel records and I call people that happened 14, 15, and they're very, very helpful with helping the cases that I have now. But I mean, that's an elongated question. The short answer is yes. It applies to the more upwardly mobile person as you described, and it also happens to the person that's trafficking.
Are there resources to help people file those complaints?
I can share some of them. I can give you my information, but it typically involves you write a letter to the station chief at the very, very local level. You can file a tort complaint with the county government or whatever government agency that's involved in the misconduct and ask for an investigation to uncover things.
Thank you. We have a question. We have a question from the audience, Miss Melinda Hines. Hello. Let me ask. Oh, I'm trying to get you to unmute. Hold on.
Okay.
There you go.
Yes. I've worked in political campaigning as well as community activism. My first encounter in LA, having moved from New York some 25, 30 years ago, was being pulled over by a police officer. My first time ever. Filed a report in El Segundo Police Department. Nothing came of it. That was back in the very early 90s. Now, as I've spent time here in comparison, I think what's really missing, I think we need to convene like a, you know, how they have the World Forum in Davos on economics, because the bottom line is we spend we're probably at $20 trillion Black people spend, and money talks. Money talks. And this is genocide. Plain and simple, it's genocide. On all fronts, we're being assaulted, we're exhausted, we're putting out fires everywhere. This is a last stand. You talk about the Indians, they went from 180 million when Columbus landed here. They're at approximately 50,000. It's economics. An economic boycott needs to happen. Now, I heard of July 7th, but boycott has to happen every single day, 365, 24/7. You look in comparison to other communities, that's how they take a hold. That's how they arrested power. When I came to Los Angeles, that was the beginning of Koreatown. And here it is. Their monument is on Wilshire and Figueroa. We can do the same thing if we shift the mindset. I think we have an opportunity here because we're at the tipping point to take a real hold of the money. Though goes the money, then comes the power. Then we can demand. But as long as we keep giving our money and trying to assimilate into a Eurocentric society that has never accepted us, but has received the money and received the votes and given us crumbs, this is never going to stop. So to me, from the educational system, from the healthcare system, we had our own thriving communities until we assimilated under desegregation. We have to get back to the bare bones of, we have everything we need. We're the ones that we're waiting for. We pull money out of all of these systems and build our own, get a war chest of those that we have multi-millionaire billionaires, have convene a forum of dialogue amongst all of these people and get it going that way. We've tried everything else. We're at 2020. We are so developed technologically and advanced, but we have gone backwards in other areas, morals, ethics, so forth. We are dying. And this is what I see is an economic boycott. There are still civil rights leaders living. I had the privilege of taking Reverend Lawson's nonviolent workshops. The question is, how did they do it then? We can do it now. And we have to learn from them while they're still living to shut it down on an economic level. That's the only thing that this capitalist society, whose God is money, will recognize.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I have to jump in there if I can, please.
Wait, really quick, Angela, I have a question with iPhone 2.
Yeah, I just wanted to piggyback off what she was saying. Ultimately, we can't forget what Malcolm X has said. Malcolm X has said they're going to use integration as a form of infiltration. And we still have not gotten that to resonate within us. You know what I'm saying? Ultimately, our ultimate goal is to, yes, build our own, yes, have our own land. But until we get to that point, until we have more grassroots leaders that are able to get to that point, what we have to do temporarily is make some sort of like a voting block. I think that's what the term is. Because I remember reading how farmers, they all band together and have one vote. You know what I'm saying? So no matter what the candidate is, no matter what the matter is, they're all voting for that one thing. And you see how the different candidates, different legislators, they all bend their backs and make sure that the farming vote is get those millions of votes from the farmers. We need to do that as Black people. We need our true leaders to get the masses to understand that concept, because just voting to vote, oh, I'm Democrat, or I'm Republican, or I'm this, or that's not working. We all got to vote as one, and we need true leaders to do that. And we can't expect these true leaders to do that because a lot of them have a lot at stake that we don't want them to jeopardize. You know what I'm saying? So this type of thing has to be grassroots. Ultimately, we do need our own, because we've tried the tried and true forever. You know what I'm saying? We've done the same exact thing in 92 watts. We here doing the same thing. Nothing's changed. So it's time for a change of tactics.
Thank you. What was your name, sir?
Keyshawn.
Hi, Keyshawn. Welcome. Angela, you had something to say?
Yes, I heard Sister Hines say that we spend about $17 trillion. Those aren't the numbers that I've been made aware of through The Color of Wealth or The Color of Money. I can't remember which book the data comes from, but of 107 trillion household dollars, white people share $100 trillion. Black people share $3 trillion. And of that $3 trillion, 90% of us share 700 billion with the B dollars, and 10% of us share $2.3 trillion. And of 100% of Black people in this country, 90% of us descend from American chattel slavery. 10% are Black immigrant. So we don't have money. We don't have wealth. We have nothing. They stole it all.
Thank you. Joe Collins,
Yeah,
do you think that Black folks can be economically sustained by what we have now?
By what we have right now, absolutely not, because we don't have the economic infrastructure in order to support Black people, having anything. I believe we can get it though, if we have the right type of leadership that actually fought for the best interests of the Black community. And if we had a Black agenda that supports the Black community. But until we get one of those, and even we have to get the Black community to be able to support each other. But until we have that, we're not going to be able to have nothing.
Does the GOP have a Black agenda?
You know what? It's funny that you ask. I believe they do, but I believe they won't tell us about it. I mean, they do subtle things like opportunity zones or, you know, permanently funding HBCUs, but that's not enough. We need more. We need economic development within our own communities. We need to take charge of our own communities. Right now, we only have neighborhoods, right? Everybody else has communities. We don't have Black communities. We have Black neighborhoods because we have no infrastructure. We have no predominantly Black business or Black corporations in our own neighborhoods. And so until we get that, then we will never have anything. We need our own banks. We need our own schools. We need our own education system. We need our own corporations. We need a way that we can be able to take care of our own people. We don't have that right now, but we will get it.
And it needs to go beyond us having our own, because yes, while we have our own, we need to make sure it's truly our own, you know what I'm saying? Because a lot of false ownership going on right now, meaning that people claim they have their own business, they have their own this, but if you check their records, they got it from this partnership, they got this loan, they got this and that. We need it to be true. This is mine, because if we take your money, we take your partnership, we take your platform, now you have a say in whatever we make, and that we can't have that no more. No more of that. Get them to leave us alone and make our own.
Yeah, but that would take us as Black men coming together. What we got to do as Black men, especially young Black men, is we got to stop hating on each other. This is not you, right? I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about Black men in general. We have to stop hating on each other. We need to stop thinking that we're trying to steal something from each other. We need to create our own partnership so we can get our own stuff.
Yes, and we will get to that point. It's not overnight. That's why I said, ultimately, in the long run, we will be able to make our own. And it won't be like everyone rising up as one. You know what I'm saying? It'll be just like what Harriet Tubman said. Harriet Tubman said that she'd be able to save more slaves if they knew they were slaves. It's going to start small, then it'll grow into more people leaving and having their own. But until we get to that point, I strongly feel that the way we can at least make a temporary change in our favor is by making another voting block and having a leadership with a large following to agree and get to understand that we all vote one. And that one.
That saying still holds true too.
I'm reading from Black Impact Consumer Categories Where African Americans Move Markets, dated February 15, 2018. It quotes here that African Americans' spending power is 1.2 trillion annually, to my earlier point.
That's what she was talking about.
1.2 trillion out of $107 trillion. This is all going back to my argument and my position on reparations. And until we collectively get behind that and demand it, we're going to continue to be the legs of the table that everyone else eats from.
The thing about that $1.2 trillion is you got to understand where that money is going, right? Because the Black community is taught to be consumers. So if we have $1.2 trillion in buying power, we're not reinvesting that money into the Black community. We're absolutely not. We're taking that money and we're giving it back to the corporations who give us jobs. So if we're not taking our money and reinvesting it back into our own communities, we're talking in circles with the $1.2 trillion spending power that we have in the Black community, because we're not taking that money, reinvesting in ourselves and doubling that money with our own people. We're giving it to everybody else and expecting them to give us something in return. And it's not going to happen.
If we share $700 billion, I would venture to say that the majority of us are using that money to live.
Oh, excuse me. I wanted to just say on a more progressive note, there is something that is happening right now that if people don't know about, they need to know about. There is a move right now in our community to acquire what is being called downtown Crenshaw. Many of you may have heard that the Crenshaw Mall is in escrow and it has not gone through yet. And what we as a community at this point are demanding is that that mall not be sold to a billionaire who has no care at all about what happens in this community. And that we actually take our dollars and build that mall. And so you can go to a website that's called Downtown Crenshaw. It's a place we can put our money. Our spending power can go into that, whatever associations that we're a part of. That is something that we as a community begin to gain some type of economic root and empowerment in our community. But anyway, I just want to put that out there, something we can start with, something to look at right now.
I think that's a great point. I guess.
Can you drop that website in the chat? I'm sorry.
Yeah, we'll drop that in the chat. What was that website, Queen?
Downtown Crenshaw.
.com.org.
Uh-huh. I believe it's .org.
Now, Joe, what would you say to people who would think that Black folks, we're not producers? Like we don't, like we're like to Angela's point about the $1.2 trillion that we spend, we're spending it to live. Like we already don't produce because of slavery, because we've been economically locked out, because of wealth extraction in our community. We don't own anything to buy from us. That's a necessity, right? We spend all that money on our rents, on our mortgages, and on gas and food and detergent. Like at what point do we actually start producing? And then to Angela's point earlier about reparations, we need reparations so that we can come together and actually start producing things so we can buy from each other, so we can start this economic sustainability in our community.
I would say that anybody who thinks that Black people can't produce anything is, I now coin the term ignorant for the lack of knowledge. And the reason why I say that is because everything that you have in America comes from Black people. The biggest issue that we have as Black people is we don't know how to monetize our Blackness, right? Everybody else does it. You look at white rappers, Hispanic rappers, even rappers overseas, they copy our style. You look at the light bulb, you look at peanut butter, you look at infrastructure. Even when it comes to architecture, they came from Africans back in Africa from building pyramids and whatnot. So one thing that we don't have right now is the financial knowledge in order for us to take what we have and use it in enterprise to be able to be global producers from America. So I would say that if you think that Black people can't produce anything, it's false. What we need more training, more financial savvy training, and we need more Black leaders, and we need help, period, from our own Black people so we can be able to enterprise and incorporate our own ideas and our own Blackness.
I didn't say we can't. I said we currently do not because we don't possess the wealth.
No, we do. We do. It's on a small level, right? When you look at people like Jay-Z or Beyonce, people who have the knowledge to be able to monetize and create that type of wealth, but then you go back to people who live in inner cities who've been programmed to think that their condition is normal, living in poverty or living without money, thinking that, I got an apartment, I have a job, and these things are normal. So these are the conditions that we have to break. We have to be able to show people that you can't get this, but this is the way to do it. But I'm open to opinion.
We're focused on a larger scale, but we are able to reach that point of monetizing our own economy through the little
Absolutely.
that we're saying. People get caught up and seeing the whole structure and saying, "Oh, we'll never get that." We'll just start small, lay a brick at a time. We'll get that structure that we want. You know what I'm saying? Because the little bit we do spend, little we do have, we have other people, other nationalities coming in and shutting up shop and taking that little. Why don't we support our own and give that little to them and slowly build up that Black economy like we once did before integration?
I absolutely agree.
That's on us. We have to stop talking about what we haven't done and what we can't do. We have to start talking about what we can do, and that is a mentality that we have to be willing to. It starts with us, When I walk out the door, where am I spending my money? Where do I bank at? What do I invest in? And we look at the possibilities. And not only that, but the examples. We've had flourishing townships, Tulsa, what they call Black Wall Street, Haiti. These were communities that were fully independent, had our own stores, our own restaurants, our own funeral parlors, and everything. And what we have done, we can do again. So let's stop talking about what we cannot do and what we don't have, and let's start talking about how we use what we do have.
Yeah.
May I say, one of the things that I observed during the last depression in 2008, now this is coming from a banking perspective. I worked for a Japanese bank back in the 90s. So people lost their jobs, people lost their homes. Wall Street got the stimulus taxpayer money to go ahead and spend. But they didn't, to me, I would have pulled out all of my money out of B of A, Wells Fargo, and Chase. And from the observation that I'm seeing, have been observing, no, not too many of us have done that. With all the scandals that's gone on with Wells Fargo and all this banking scandals that's gone on, we folks still keep our money in the same banks that have hoodwinked us. You know, that's where you get no respect. When you keep giving the money to the people that disrespect you, you get no respect. You deserve no respect. And then the other thing, we can put up credit unions. You know, as I put in the chat, my re-education from my miseducation of European education in this country, and mind you, I am an immigrant. I come from Panama. Lots of immigrants built this country. And from my observation is, in the education that I got in the African Restoration Project that I learned during my time living in Long Beach is what has educated me on everything that I have felt as a child up until this point. That has been my classroom for the last 30 years of living in Los Angeles. If you start with that, and you have the Afiba Center, you have the African Cultural Center, you have all these centers in these places. Every single day of the week, there's a classroom going on in the evening time, after work. People are full in there. That's how you start to shift the mindset and the self-esteem of our people that are the lowest rung will start to turn around to lift them up so that the message can get to them. And the higher ones that have succeeded are to lift those of us up. But it starts with that. And that's so simple, that costs no money. My sister friend, Shades of Africa in Long Beach, she started this 30 years ago. And so she, for instance, I'll give you an example. There is a company, a Black-owned company, which she researches, that in South Carolina that makes detergent and toilet paper. She shipped a pallet of detergent and toilet paper. That's where it starts, to support the businesses. You spend the money and then the volume comes later, but we don't want to make the sacrifice to spend the money so that volume can happen and so that the price can go down in order for it to be equitable for those of us that can't afford it. If we keep putting in the negative, the we can't, they never, they, you know, all of that, the power is in the tongue. And we are, this is our generations right now. Where do you stand? What are you going to do? What are you going to leave the next 7 generations that come after you, that the ancestors fought to survive from the Middle Passage? All of this, we are inundated with the negativity of it, but we have to fight it. And I think the fight starts in that one room, bringing in the children, you know, bringing in the families, bringing in the seniors, so that we can start to get the generations together and bridge that divide and re-educate ourselves. This is the perfect time while the classrooms are shut. All of that is not for us anyway.
Okay,
so
thank you, Ms. Melinda. I'm sorry to cut you off.
That's what I had to say.
Sorry, thank you. You provide a perfect segue. I wanted to talk about Brandy Bonner. You said you were shot, and Ms. Melinda, you mentioned about changing the mindset, changing the mind frame. We all have to come together. Like, how are we going to come together if we have people in just different, you know, aspects of Black life, right? Like, we have different priorities. Brandy, where are you? Where'd she go? Is she there? Oh, there you go, girl. Can you talk a little bit about that, like the division the conversation that we had about the division in the Black community?
Well, first I'll start off recently. I want to say, I think it was like May 6th, actually Teacher Appreciation Day. I was actually shot by a little boy. He was a young kid, you know, and an issue that I have is it's very hard to tell people to come together, especially I'm living in the neighborhood. I mean, I'm pretty sure most of you do or have, but you know, I'm literally living in a neighborhood right now where there's a gang war. And so it's extremely hard to say, oh, or like Joe said, you know, the black men need to stop hating on each other, you know, but many of these young men are brainwashed, and, you know, they're not understanding that they are adding to what's going on within the Black community. They're not understanding. And I understand, you know, your dad's in jail. I understand that these generational things have altogether come from racism and injustice and link all the way back to slavery. I'm very understanding of that. But, you know, it's very hard for us to say, oh, you know, we're just going to come together as a community. We're just going to come together as a community. When within the community, you know, many of these gang members, they're not willing to come together. You know, I'm not even a gang member. You know, I'm outside talking to a friend while my sister's selling plates. And just because I'm talking to a guy with a blue hat who's not a gang member, why are we getting shot at? You know, that just doesn't make sense. And that mentality makes it rough to say, oh, let's come together. We need to come together. I mean, I'm not saying that it can't happen. I believe anything can happen, honestly, through Jesus Christ. But it's very hard to change that way of thinking that many of these young men have from when they're little boys. Again, I say I was shot by a little boy. He was a young baby. And honestly, if he was a man, I probably would be dead, but his arms were too small. He was a kid. And so it's tough to just make those thoughts real, because within the community, we're not sticking together the way we should.
Thank you for that, Brandy. Does anyone have any more questions? I guess we can start to wrap here. I really want to take this opportunity for the people who are not on the panel to ask questions of the specialists on the panel. I think Dr. Rachel is still here, and Justin Palmer.
Who are the specialists?
You can raise your hand or go ahead.
Who are the specialists?
Well, pretty much, I guess you weren't here for the introduction. So we have Miss Umoja, Miss Asada. I call her Queen Asada. And then there's Brandy Bonner. She's an educational specialist. And there is Joe Collins. He is a congressional candidate. He's running against Maxine Waters. There is Justin Palmer. He is the civil rights attorney on the panel. Dr. Rachel Ross is the MD. Who else? Skip and I think Brother Jabari and Skip may have been dropped.
Okay.
But yeah, pretty much. If you know you're not on the panel, you have a question, go ahead. No? Any questions? I think that was, I think we lost some people. Where's Angela's gone? She was about to say some stuff too. All right, well.
I do have just one last thing to share.
Sure.
All these problems basically stem from lack of leadership. You know, the body cannot move logically. The body cannot move in a set way without its head, you know what I'm saying? And they systematically removed our different, heads of leaderships. But what we have to do for the next leader when he rises or when she rises, we have to make sure that we don't have this like somewhat cancel culture type thing and hope someone's passed over them, because everybody loves Malcolm X. Everybody talks about how much he means to them and stuff like that. But honest truth is, if Malcolm X was here today, the vast majority wouldn't receive what he has to say because they wouldn't let pass the actions of Detroit Red. You know what I'm saying? So how many other people who are currently, messing up or doing whatever that we essentially cancel and stop them from flourishing into that that they're called to be, the Malcolm X's, the Fred Hamptons, the Patrice Lumumbas. We have to always keep an environment allowing somebody to grow as who they've been called to be and not hold someone's past over their head. Because if Detroit Red was seen on Twitter doing this and doing that, people would not receive Malcolm X. So we have to make sure we keep that environment less toxic, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, I also don't want to overlook the progression of Detroit Red, right? A lot of people, what really upsets me most about, of course, these are Black lives that are being killed, but it's like these people never get to reach their full potential of what they could have been or what they could be to our community. Like, it's really a problem, which is why I named this company BlackPact. Like, we have to make a pact to each other to do this work, because there are so many different nonprofits that are doing Black workers' rights, that are doing union stuff, that are doing women in politics stuff. But it's like, yeah, but if we don't all have the same like social contract that we are going to actually make our people important, prioritize our people and prioritize our community, and then do this work from there, everybody's just working in silos and not as much work is getting done as it should be. You know what I'm saying? So I really want to encourage people to really sign up, become members, get involved with BlackPact, and help us figure out how we can come together and fix different things in the community. I don't want to just say, hey, this is what I want the people to do. I really want us to do research, to go out and send out questionnaires. I want people to really have a real investment and engagement in their actual political freedom, their economic freedom. Joe, he seems to be leaving. But yeah, pretty much that's what it is. And, donate. We have so many people that have gotten denied for the PPP program and for the EIDL loans. People need money out here. So if you can donate, I'm starting a Black folk fund to help give people economic resources without all that red tape stuff. If you've been denied for certain services, come to BlackPact, send us your denial letter, and we'll try to break you off some money, because we out here, we struggling. Everybody else is getting helped out and we're not. Anything else? Any parting words from the panel? Oh, there you go, Angela, you came back, girl.
I wanted to say that one of our probably most profound historians said something that we really need to pay attention to. And he said that the issue of the 21st century is the issue of the color line. We're gonna have to deal with it. We're at this point right now. The issue is about what we do and how we do it, okay? We are, each one of us in our own way, we have to make a stand for the victory, you know, and we have to check wickedness and greed in the world in our own way, and united together, we have to do that so that we can build, you know, the kind of love we want, you know, in our community, so that we can build healthy, you know, communities, be of goodwill, treat each other, you know, with decency and respect, so that we can truly have a thriving, healthy community and create, you know, heaven on earth in our communities. But it starts with us.
Absolutely. Nicely said. Thank you so much. And part of why I titled this panel discussion like Resurrecting Malcolm, this was before the uprising, right? So I feel like we are there. We are channeling the real spirit of Malcolm X by any means necessary. Folks is out there protesting, they out there looting, people are actually delivering, right? And it's like, what do we do with this energy now? We have to cultivate it and we have to keep it going. We cannot let this moment just end up as, well, we can't let this whole movement end up as a moment. All right. Well, thank y'all so much for being on this panel. I really had a great time having this conversation, and I really hope the public really got more information and could participate. Are there any more questions for the specialists before they go?
Just wanted to say thank you, Tara, for taking your time and your energy and putting this together. This is hopefully only one of many discussions that our community will have, because we have to talk to each other, and we have to affirm each other, and we have to share with each other so that we can build the type of institutions we want to build.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I want to thank you too.
Thank you, Miss Ann. And Miss Ann, go ahead. You can plug your nonprofit, what you're doing, your youth center, right?
Yes, I'm outside right now. I'm actually here at the youth center right now. I'm doing the brick wall. I'm doing a lot of this work around here myself. But what I'm going to be doing, and I'm opening up a community center on 71st and Crenshaw, and it's going to be open to the community. We're going to be doing things with the children, financial literacy. We're going to have coding, robotics, esports. We're going to actually have a skating ring up here, a basketball league. And for the adults, I'm doing a job referral center, as well as we're going to have financial literacy. We're also going to be having, like you were saying earlier, where every night I want to have some type of workshop here where we can talk about things that is going on in the community, because I am of this community. I live in a house that my father bought when I was 4 years old. So I've seen the changes in the community. I know what the community needs. I went out on a limb and got this building. I fought with these people for 4 days for this building that they were going to actually tear down and put up 400 and something apartment units that we couldn't even afford to live in. But they're not going to do that for the next 15 years because I tied them up.
There you go. Thank you for doing that work. Please, y'all, donate to Miss Ann and her nonprofit. Thank you all so much. Oh, and I guess with Dr. Rachel, she's gone, so now I can go outside. So she's saying that we don't have many cases in California. Because I've been locked up in the house, but I did go and protest yesterday, so I guess I can.
Well, wait a minute.
Oh,
Now, I did say to protect yourself and to be mindful that there is something here, but I don't think that we have to, be like our brothers and sisters around the country who are scared to even open their front door, scared to hug their grandchildren. We only got one shot at life. And if we continue to let the government trick us into thinking we just need to stay locked in our homes, shit's really gonna hit the fan. That was my point.
Look, I was invited to 2 birthday parties, and I was like, "Bitch, you crazy?" Like, no. But so can I go to the next birthday party?
No. Be careful.
All right.
Yeah.
That was the conversation we had in the first half.
Be mindful, be mindful.
Yeah.
Don't be fearful, but be mindful. Be careful, if you're standing around you and you have 20 people standing around you, no one has a mask on and a couple are coughing, I would say get the hell out of Dodge. But, just be very mindful of your environment and what's happening around you, as opposed to just staying, in your home and missing life,
So we can still socialize, but at a distance.
Well, here's the thing. We're in California. It's the law. I mean, they could arrest us now if you don't do that. So I think what we have to keep in mind, too, that we didn't discuss here is that this process of using the riots and using COVID to strip our rights away even more, to the point where they can say, well, you were putting your neighbor at risk. So that's why we've removed you from the home and quarantined you. You're coughing. That's why we forced you to take this test. So what we have to do is be mindful that as we're watching these riots unfold and we're upset about the things that are happening and the comments our presidents are making and all that, we got to stay focused on the bigger picture here, which is making sure that our rights don't continue to get stripped away on a daily basis because they're slipping legislation in that would allow them to come into our homes and test us, that would allow them to remove our loved ones from the home if they test positive, to quarantine them and keep the rest of the community safe. That's the type of stuff we have to really pay attention to, because there's some smoke and mirrors going on here. There's some switch and bait, and this tracking that they're doing of us, and these laws that they're passing under the current. Remember 9/11? They stripped all our rights away, and we really never got all of them back. So what we got to pay attention to is how that's going to happen through COVID, and to kind of protect our liberties.
Thank you. Nicely said. And if anyone else has any links or your Instagram handles or whatever, please drop them in the chat so everybody can follow you and have all of your contact information. All right. Thank y'all so much. All right. This is just the first of many. So please come back. And I'm so honored that all of you came through, and that I know all y'all was in my cell phone, and I was just like, hey, can you do this? Can you do this? So I feel honored to be able to do that and be able to just reach out to specialists the way that we did today. And I hope you guys will come back.
Yeah, awesome.
Thank you.
Hi, everybody.
The mirror looking out there.